Hello folks, Scott here with the new My Monthly Hero July 2023 kit. Of course, everything comes in these great 8x10 zippered pouches. Let's see what we've got in our kit this month. Looks like we are going on a picnic to the river this month. Let's dig in. So here's our backer cards with some classic kit examples and some of the premium kit examples. Our classic kit contains a 6x8-inch stamp set. This stamp set is all silhouetted wildflowers and critters with lots of sentiments here. We got life's a picnic, you're the best, have a beautiful day, go wild, friend, hello, explode nature. Oh, explore nature, not explode nature. Find your bliss. Got a butterfly, a bug, a frog, a snail. This big wildflower silhouette stamp here. That's our stamp set. We get a Dandelion Fancy Dies die set, which has 8 dies. So that's a dandelion, dandelion, dandelion. These are little pieces of dandelion. That's 6, and then 2 pieces of grass. This is a big Parklands window fancy die. That's our dies this month. We also get a nice cling stamp. This is a linen texture cling stamp that's 3 inches by 4 inches. And then we get a blue to green reactive ombre stamp pad. Always like their ombre stamp pads. That should work really well with these silhouette stamps here. And then that brings us to our premium kit. And the premium kit contains this big batch of dies. These are our picnic basket fancy dies. So we've got a picnic basket, there's a pie, champagne, bread, looks like a salami, cheese, cookies or crackers, a wine glass, grapes, and then there's 2 picnic scenic detail fancy dies. One of those is right here, the little picnic blanket, a lounge chair, a small picnic basket, some dishes set out, and then this die here is for the rushing river, the place where we are having our little picnic. Really love that picnic basket die. That should be lots of fun. And then we have something absolutely new to Hero Arts, Ephemera. This is the first time Hero Arts has included ephemera in their stamp kits, in their My Monthly Hero kits. Ephemera, it looks like it's all based on the wildflowers. There's supposed to be 45 pieces in this pack. I'm not going to take them all out, but you can see we've got a whole bunch of ephemera. And then we also get some paper with our premium kit. We get 2 sheets of white wood grain paper. I think you can see that wood grain right there. 2 of those. We got 1 sheet of passion flower and 1 sheet of pesto. All of those, of course, are 5.5 by 8.5. That's everything in our classic and premium kit this month. So let's pack up our basket and head to the river for a little midsummer picnic. Although it's a little too hot right here for a picnic right now. But you can always spread a blanket out on your living room floor. And here we have our 10 cards for the month. Actually, there's 15 here, so a little bit of something extra this month. I figured I would start out fairly simple this month with this great cluster of wildflowers here. So our first card this month is a Find Your Bliss card. Naturally, since this is a 4¼ inch wide stamp, of course seemingly designed for portrait use on an A2 card, I wanted to expand this stamp to fit on an A2 card in a landscape orientation. So on a panel of white cardstock, I ink blended some lemon drop reactive ink over a little more than half of the front. I stamped the wildflowers using the ombre reactive ink. I did use the blue towards the top, thinking that it would probably blend with the yellow background to make it a little more green, which it did, close enough. I shifted the stamp a little to the left for the first stamp, so you didn't see the left edge of the stamp. So that's it, about right there. And then I repeated it over here. So this edge right here is actually, you have not seen that before. We start getting repeats there, but that's a great way to extend the width of a stamp without making it look exactly repeated. I added these little dandelion floaters here. I actually thought those were little dragonflies at first, and it wasn't until I actually stamped them that I realized, oh, those are little dandelion floaters. That adds a little bit of movement. Everything's not totally connected to each other. I stamped the sentiment using only the 2 greens on the ombre stamp pad. It fits nicely right there. I trimmed the stamp panel to 4 inches by 5 1/4 and added a thin pesto mat behind that. No, I'm not cheating. I'm not using the pesto from the premium kit. I actually have some pesto cardstock in my stash. I glued those to a white A2 card base and I called it done. I really like this arrangement of wildflowers. It's well composed and so much quicker than using the individual wildflower stamps. So these dandelion fancy dies caught my eye, and I thought it would be fun to pair those dies up with the dandelion stamps. So for our next card, we've got our Go Wild card featuring those dandelions. So I die cut the 3 dandelions and the 3 floaters from some plain white cardstock and used a light gray alcohol marker for the stems and the centers. On a panel of light gray cardstock, I ink blended some windy swooshes with a very small blending brush using the blue from the ombre ink pad and some unicorn white pigment ink. Give us a little windy background there. I stamped the dandelion stamp and the floaters with Hero Arts contour ink, and I did a little stamp surgery on the floaters so I could get a single floater to stamp all by itself in a few places. I stamped the sentiment using the contour ink, mini stampings, and then used embossing and watermark ink to stamp it one last time so I could emboss it with some clear embossing powder. I trimmed this stamped panel to 3 1/4 inches by 4 1/2 with a lawn fawn stitched rectangle die, added a mat of Gina K blue raspberry cardstock. That seemed to match the blue in our reactive stamp pad pretty well. And I glued those down to a white card base. So you know that dandelions have a real ethereal quality to them. I was putting this card together and I had a little piece of vellum on my desk. So I wondered if that might possibly work for some of the floaters. So I die cut 3 floaters, the 3 little floater dies from some vellum and added them to the card front. Very interesting. That's kind of between the stamping and the white die cuts. I really like those. I wonder what it might look like to die cut the complete dandelions from vellum, or maybe add a cardstock stem or something. I don't know. Very interesting. I do love dandelions. I think these dies are great fun. Go wild. We also got that 3 inch by 4 inch cling stamp in the classic kit. A little bit of an odd shape, but perfect for multimedia cards or even a simple background. That gave us this card. Our third card is hello. Well, hello. I stamped the linen cling stamp on some white cardstock using the lemon drop and creamsicle reactive inks, blended between those a little bit. I stamped the flower and the snail and the sentiment using Hero Arts cocoa ink. I dug around my stash and I found the perfect die to cut this whole stamp out. This is the largest Spellbinders Nestabilities Deckled Rectangles large die. And you can see right here, that's the original stamping and that's the die cut. So there is literally the entire stamp die cut there. I was so happy when I found that I had a die that actually fit that, and a decal edge die too, so it looks really nice. I ink blended walnut stained Distress Oxide ink around the edges, mounted that to a white card base with foam tape. This card needed a little sparkle, so I dug through my stash and found these nice dark copper sequins and added a few to the card front. This is a very simple, straightforward card, but it's still lovely, and it packs quite a punch. Hello. I'll probably pay a little bit more attention to this little linen cling stamp now that I know that I have a die that fits it perfectly. And then we have that Parklands window fancy die. This die didn't seem to match the scale of our stamps or the other die cuts or the Dandelion dies. So I figured we'd just use it on its own. So for our next card, we've got Explore Nature with a nice galaxy in the background. Talk about a very simple, straightforward, yet impressive card. The Parklands window is die cut from a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch piece of Hero Hues pitch black cardstock. The sentiment is stamped with unicorn white pigment ink and embossed with white embossing powder. The background is a piece of Alta-New watercolor nebula wide washi tape, burnished to an A2 card front. I love this washi tape. You need a galaxy background. That's your perfect, quick and easy galaxy. Very colorful. I love seeing that through this window die. I added thin pieces of black foam tape behind the die cut and mounted it on top of that little nebula there. Though I'm not quite sure what you would use this sentiment for. Explore nature, maybe retirement? Retirement for a camper? I don't know. I do think this is a very beautiful card. Okay, but now I feel like I have shortchanged that Parkland window die. So let's try it one more time, this time with some color. And we have You're the Best. Now, this might be a little bit more in line with what the designers at Hero Arts were thinking about for that fancy die. This time, I die cut the Parklands from a 4 1/4 inch by 5 1/2 inch white alcohol-friendly cardstock. I covered everything with my Spectrum Noir alcohol markers. Here's a quick shot of the markers I used to color the Parkland. It's not a lot of colors, but I did go back and forth over the whole thing many times, so there's lots of layers. I do think of this as a bit more abstract than realistic, which also led me to just leave the edges ambiguous instead of trying to color the whole card front or create some kind of rigid framework for that die. I ink blended the sunbeams on a white A2 card base using lemon drop ink and some simple masking. I knew I didn't want to draw more parkland in the background, and I thought a clearing with the sun beaming through the trees would be quite effective. So I stamped the sentiment with antique linen distress oxide ink and embossed it with some clear embossing powder. I added foam tape to the die cut and mounted it to the card base. This is a fun encouragement card, a perfect thank you card, especially for something maybe a little bit more personal. You're the best. Well, that's 5 cards, but you know, I actually haven't used hardly any of the single plain Wildflowers stamps. You know, I do think silhouette stamps have a tendency to get a little boring. So I was trying to bring some life and color to these flowers. So I remember there's something you can do. Card number 6, we have A Beautiful Day. Have a beautiful day. I used my Tombow watercolor markers to color the stamps and then stamp them. I secured a panel of Canson mixed media cardstock to a stick and stamp mat and put that in my MISTI to make multiple stampings. It's been a while since I watercolored with stamps. You know, Colorado Craft Company has a whole line of stamps specifically made for watercoloring with watercolor markers. Now, the best thing about coloring your stamps is that you can give a flat silhouette multiple colors quite easily. You can also do selective masking by simply not coloring a portion of the stamp. You can also layer colors and create some depth and dimension, which works particularly well with anything organic like wildflowers. And of course, you can, color more than one time and stamp it again since everything's in your MISTI. This is a nice medium green. That's going to give us our good stem for this next flower. Wipe that off, and then we'll move on to a lilac, a purple color. We'll lay down that first layer on the bud part of that stamp. It's really easy to color these stamps, especially with Tombow markers. I don't know if those are specifically good. Look at that, almost a perfect stamping there. We'll do that one more time with that same purple. Then we'll add a little bit darker purple at the base of that. And then, of course, we'll go back in with that light color and kind of blend those out a little bit. Then we're going to stamp that to our paper. And we have a lovely little purple flower. I love that so much. Let's try another one. Here's, I think that's a little kind of a buttercup or daisy. I'm not quite sure what kind of a flower that is, but I figure that's about where I want it. So I'll go ahead and pick it up with my lid of the Misty. And then I'm going to grab a piece of masking paper here because that's a little shorter. I wanted to shorten that stamp up a bit, so I'll just mask off the bottom of that and you let it be ultimately ending at the ground at the same place as the other flowers do. All of those other flowers are stamped with their entire stamp. So this is the only one that's getting truncated at this point. So I always pre-season my stamps just by rubbing my fingers on them, wiping them down with a little human oil of kindness. Oil of human kindness. There you go. I'm going with a darker green for the stem on this one. Just stamp that down. It's a little bit light on the top there. So we'll go back in and just add a little bit more color to the top of that. Those fine points on those Tombow markers make it really easy to color individual parts of the stamp. So I'm going to go into the yellow here and color most all of the flower part with this as a kind of a light yellow. You'll see it's a little bit too light when we stamp it down, but again, since everything's held down to my Misty, it's easy to stamp and stamp and stamp again. Here's a second round of that yellow Tombow marker, just coloring the top. And then, of course, stamping that again. That's a little bit better this time, but I think I decided to go with a darker yellow. So here I am, darker yellow. You can tell I'm only coloring the center part of that bud. We're going to stamp that down, and oh yeah, that's a little better. That's a little better. We'll add some more of that darker yellow to make that bud pop just a little bit more. And that's starting to read more like a flower. Now, of course, we want to add some shading to this. So I break into a darker color. This is a tan color, and I'm going to add some, trying to add some shadows and highlights to the different petals, give it a little dimension just with my Tombow markers. Of course, after putting the dark on, I'll go in there with the lighter yellow and blend that out just a little bit. I'm trying not to use water on the card itself. Stamp that down, and voila, that added so much. I take that same color back in. I'm going to do those little stamens or whatever they are that are sticking out of the buds of the flower, those little straight pieces. You can see that when I lift off right here. There you go. That makes that perfectly readable. We'll do the other one on the top. Make them both stand out since they are parts of the flower. I love the dimension I got on this one, kind of just luck of the draw, I guess. And then, of course, when you take off the masking, also note that the grass along the bottom doesn't have a flat bottom edge. You can do that with markers. I am loving this. I stamped the sentiment with walnut stained distress oxide ink and embossed it with some clear embossing powder. I die cut the panel to 5 inches by 3 3/4 inches with a lawn fawn stitched rectangle die, added a dark brown mat behind that, and glued them both down to a white card base. Some tiny little bronze gems adds a little more sparkle around the sentiment. Have a beautiful day indeed. I must remember to use this stamp coloring technique on solid stamps more often, especially organic ones. Okay, so that covers just about everything in the classic kit. We can move on to the premium kit supplies now and those picnic fancy dies. And we have Life's a Picnic with a beautiful little picnic basket. So I die cut the basket and the champagne and the grapes and the cheese and the bread and the salami from some alcohol-friendly cardstock. I colored them all with my Spectrum Noir alcohol markers. I did use a gold gel pen for the bottle accents and a white gel pen for the grape highlights. I did die cut the champagne glasses from some Hero Arts acetate. We got some of that in our My Monthly Hero November of 2022 kit. And 2 of the triangle dies from some old Lawn Fawn Gotta Have Gingham pattern paper. Very handy with a kit like this. I trimmed a piece of the yellow gingham pattern paper to 3.5 by 5.5, and I stamped the sentiment with antique linen distress oxide ink, embossed that with some clear embossing powder. I glued that to the center of an A2 white card paste and added 2 1/8 inch strips of Hero Hues Canary cardstock to the edges. I attached all the goodies and the basket to the card front using glue and thin pieces of foam tape. Of course, I folded those little napkins over the edge of the basket. For a final touch, I added some yellow gems to highlight the sentiment and add a little bit of sparkle. These are all fun dies, and I really think cutting the champagne glasses from acetate was rather inspired. It's not like you can't see that they're there. 2 wine glasses with a big bottle of champagne. Life's a Picnic. And then, of course, we have the Picnic Scenic Detail Fancy Dies. We got the river here and our picnic scene here. Again, another die set that doesn't seem to match the scale of anything else in this kit. Neither the stamps nor the ephemera or the picnic dies. It's a kind of a standalone pair of dies, I guess. So for our next card, we have a Wish You Were Here card. I thought that was very appropriate since there's only 1 chair set for this picnic. I went back and forth a few times on this card. I die cut the picnic die just above the middle of an A2 panel of alcohol-friendly cardstock. I colored the chair and the basket with alcohol markers, and I used a red Pigma Micron pen to add the pattern to the picnic blanket, and a blue Pigma Micron pen for the basket. Then I cut those pieces away from the panel. I die cut another picnic die from more white cardstock, and after cutting out the dishes, I ink blended the panel with green apple distress oxide ink. Then I glued the colored pieces on top of the ink blended piece and the dishes on top of the blanket. So I die cut the water or the river from a piece of blue watercolor pattern paper. I added some clear embossing to that just to give it a little bit of a watery shine. And I fiddled around with its placement. It seemed a little odd to put it behind the picnic die cut, but I thought if I added the far bank of the river, it might make more sense to me. So I colored up this far bank with alcohol markers and cut the top edge using the grass die from this is from the My Monthly Hero May of 23 kit. Grass die for that stretch of grass right there. I also die cut the 2 grass dies from the Dandelion die set, colored them with alcohol markers, and glued those behind the near bank to grass it up a bit, make it match the other bank a little bit more. So 1 more panel of 3 3/4 by 5 inch cardstock, ink blended with some splash reactive ink, will be our background. I trimmed the picnic, river, and far bank pieces to 3 3/4 inches wide and attached them to the card front with a glue and some thin pieces of foam tape. I stamped this sentiment, which is from the My Monthly Hero July 2019 kit. I stamped that with green apple reactive ink and emboss that with some clear embossing powder. I think the river dye works well in this arrangement. The far shore piece certainly helps it to read a little bit better as a river. And I like this sentiment as well. I wish you were here. It's no fun having a picnic alone. And then we have 45 pieces of ephemera. This is the first time, of course, Hero Arts has included ephemera with their kits. I have to admit, I've never been a big fan of ephemera. And all of the ephemera in this kit, though colorful, are still just simple silhouettes with variably accurate die cuts. So I thought a great way to use the ephemera would be to make a brilliantly colorful themed set of thank you cards featuring all of these silhouette ephemera pieces. We've got thank you, and a 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 thank you, all in different colors. 6 different cards here. I die cut 6 panels of white cardstock to 5 inches by 3 3/4 inches with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. I added a thin black mat behind all of them. I picked out 6 of the largest ephemera pieces, and I dug through my stash to find matching cardstocks. So these turned out to be, this is Gina K Plum Punch, Gina K Sweet Mango, Gina K Passionate Pink, Gina K Sandy Beach, Hero Hues Plum, and Hero Hues Periwinkle. Now those aren't all perfect matches, but they are all really darn close. They work quite well for this set of 6. It's also seemed to me that almost every piece of ephemera in this pack was a completely different color. I had a hard time matching more than 1 or 2 pieces together color-wise. So I turned all that cardstock into A2 card bases, matched them up with the ephemera pieces, and decided where to stamp the sentiment. I stamped the thank you sentiment from the My Monthly Hero May of 23 kit. So that's the same kit we got the die from. Here's that thank you stamp right there. I stamped all of those with intense black ink and embossed them with clear embossing powder. The panels glued to the card front, the ephemeras glued on top of that. I do enjoy giving a nice set of cards as a hostess gift or a simple present for any occasion. And thank you cards are certainly useful for most anyone. So there's our nice little set of 6 thank you cards. Thank you. So I really like that pie die that came with the picnic fancy dies, but I couldn't justify putting it into the basket sideways. I mean, everything would fall out of the pie. So I saved it for a good pun on my last card, and we have I only have pies for you. A fun pie pun for you. From some plain ivory cardstock, I die cut 6 of the pies and colored them with my alcohol markers, used some colored pencil to add a little texture. I colored 3 of them completely, and then the other 3 I colored just the outer crusts. I separated the crusts from their centers and glued them on top of the crust of the other 3 fully colored pieces. That adds some nice thickness to the edges of our pie there. I die cut 1.5 inch circles of metallic cardstock in red, blue, and champagne to be the filling in our pies. That champagne is a good apple filling for apple. There you go. You can see all that shiny fillings in our fruit pies. I glued those to the back of the die cuts. That's a great pie die. I really like that. I don't think I have anything like that in my stash. So I created and printed this sentiment using my Silhouette software and the Arial font directly on a A2 card base. I only have pies for you. I only have pies for you. A good Valentine card. I cut another piece of that yellow gingham pattern paper to 3 inches square, added a mustardy tan mat, and glued those to the card front. I attached the apple pie with glue and the other 2 pies with foam tape. I tell you, using that metallic cardstock for the fillings really makes this card pop, adds all the shine that this card will ever need. Apple, blueberry, and cherry pies, which is your favorite. And I think that's a terrifically good pun to use on top of this all. I only have pies for you. And there we have my 10 cards, well, 15 cards inspired by the My Monthly Hero July 2023 Classic and Premium kits. It's quite an eclectic batch of cards. I did feel like this kit kind of had 3 or 4 mini kits included. We've got the Wildflowers and the Dandelions and the Parkland window, and then the picnic dies, and then the Scenic detail fancy dies. They're all apparently themed together, but they're not necessarily the easiest of items to use together. I mean, we don't even get to our picnic till card 7. I tell you, if you like a wide variety of items in your card kits, then this one might be right up your alley. I really like all the parts of this kit, but I did find it a challenge to use them all together. I really love the beautiful day card and the Nebula Parkland window and the pies. Of course, I love pie. The Dandelion dies, the picnic dies. I really like everything in this kit. And both the classic and premium versions of this month's kit are still available at Hero Arts. If I've caught your eye or given you any new ideas and you want to grab a kit for yourself, please use my links listed below when you go shopping at Hero Arts. It's always thoroughly appreciated, and it actually does help support this channel. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me here. It is always appreciated and valued, and I know you have so many other things to do with your time that I am quite humbled that you choose to spend some of it with me. Let me know what your thoughts are on this kit and which cards are your favorites. And then remember to like me, list me, pin me, post me, share me with all of your crafty friends. Do click that like button up there on top. Give me a comment. YouTube will use those metrics to send this video to more and more people. Remember this summer, beware of heat stroke wherever you live. And I send you and yours love and light, and as always, happy crafting. For more detailed information, better pictures, and product links, please visit my website at cardcutups.com.